Welcome to SJS Arts. So today I just want to let you know that I was a guest on Chris Mohan's Something Blue podcast. We shot the episode on Saturday, but now it's up on YouTube. I just watched it. It's very early in the morning, but it was so nice to talk to Chris and be a guest on his channel. And actually, Solitary Ronin Films was also a guest on that podcast. So we had this trio of weirdos and we talked about some very interesting films. Again, the format of Chris's podcast is that every time a guest chooses one film that the guest wants to do a deep dive on, and I chose the film called Funeral Parade of Roses by Toshio Matsumoto. And we talked about that, but also the format includes two other topics always. So the first topic in this podcast is that the guests uh, will talk about some recent watches. So for us, it was that each of us three chose three films that we have watched recently, talked about them. Again, I'm not going to reveal which films I talked about, so that it will be surprising for you, but I had a interesting mix there, to say the least. And then the final part of that podcast format is that we talk about some upcoming Blu-ray and 4K releases, and then also Blu-rays, 4Ks in general. And we, for example, talked about like some recommendations that we have for people, again, releases that have been released this year, and talked about little bit about the upcoming holiday period and possible like gifts for that and things like that. But yeah, again, it was great to talk about my recent watches and those upcoming Blu-rays, and then Funeral Parade of Roses. Again, the Funeral Parade of Roses part was something that I was actually really nervous about, because if you follow my channel, you might know that even though I'm not in the closet anymore, but it's still really hard for me to talk about anything kind of queer related to other people, because I'm so used to kind of hiding that part of myself. But I think it went well, and I think these types of small things are really important for my personal growth, and actually had lots of personal growth in that department kind of last week, both again due to that, due to this podcast, and also one thing about the one thing in the university where I also managed to talk about it for the first time ever, very casually to some people that I don't know that well. So yeah, it was a very good week for me to do three different podcasts, three different collaborations, and also have that great experience at the university. So good times. November has started really well for me, and as I always say on my channel, again, I love collaborating, even with my social anxiety and stuff. I think this is what YouTube is all about, and I hope that I will have many more collaborations with both Chris and Ronin and many of my other YouTube friends in the future, like with Altes from Cine Art Therapy and Azarin Prod, of course. Yeah. So again, thank you, Chris, for having me, and also thank you, Ronin, for coming on as well. Yeah. But anyway, if you have watched Funeral Parade of Roses, I think you will find our chat very interesting. We went quite in depth with the film, but of course it's one of those films that you could talk about for hours. So of course we couldn't talk about it all, but we went pretty deeply into kind of the themes and also the structure of the film, plot of the film, and I also brought in little talk about the BFI booklet and how it talked about some kind of again Japanese queer culture in general a bit and that stuff. But yeah, I don't want to spoil it all. But anyway, go watch the podcast, and if you haven't watched Funeral Parade of Roses yet, you can skip that part. It's in the end, but you should still watch the first two parts of the chat where we talk about recent watches and some Blu-rays. But anyway, here you can see the podcast. It was the seventh episode of Something Blue. And yeah, thanks for watching this announcement video. Please go watch the podcast. Please go watch Parade of Roses and have a good week. Sayonara. Don't drink all the coke and arigato gozaimashita.